Go, go, Chundria. Chundria. It's Chundria Show.
Get to know Symone Redwine. She's a successful attorney, legal correspondent, and reality star on OWN's hit dating show, Ready to Love. Symone Redwine, welcome to the Chundria Show.
Hey girl, I'm so excited to be here.
All right, well, let us dive on in. Ready to Love fans have been getting to know you this season. Tell me how you enjoyed your overall experience on the reality show.
Girl, it was day by day. Some days I was like, oh, this is so fun. And the other days I just want to like punch the air. I was like, I hate this. I want to go home. So it would depend on what was for dinner. It would depend on the food. It would depend on how the men's were acting. It would depend on how I was getting along with the ladies. So it just varied.
I completely understand. I mean, you're locked away in a resort and you're being filmed all day, all night, all meals, so I get it.
Yes, and they took our cell phones and our laptops, right? Because they wanted us to just interact all the time.
You never had your cell phone at all during the whole time?
No, you'd have to get special permission. So because I'm also running my law practice, like I would have to ask for it in the morning, but then sometimes like the production assistant who had it maybe on the other side of the resort and things like that. So it was like a big to do. So yeah, you couldn't just like call your mom and be like, Mama, this girl, or this boy. No, it was like your mom. Yeah. So that part was really challenging. Plus, like I still had to manage my law practice. So, my head paralegal had the production assistant's phone number. So sometimes I'd be like getting ready to go on a date or something, and a production assistant come running with his phone because there was like an urgent motion that I needed to approve or this or that. Girl, it was a mess.
Sounds like it. And then you had to be vulnerable. And then since you couldn't utilize your family, your close friends, you had to really kind of lean on each other through the process.
Yes, that definitely made it more challenging for sure.
Now, you've been incredibly brave and vulnerable in this journey. What have you taken away from it? And how will you apply it to your next chapter?
Absolutely. I've said that I really feel like after this experience, I'm going to be an even better girlfriend than I was before. Because one of the main things that I realized is, one, my instincts and my intuition are good. They're largely spot on. They're accurate about people and things and so forth. But also that I need to work on doing a better job of asking for exactly what I want in my love life. I do that for a living. I do it on my behalf and behalf of others, but I'm not so good at doing that with men and just allowing myself to be more vulnerable with them. So those are some of my biggest takeaways.
You know what I love? I mean, the men were so different. And so I love that, in a sense, you could kind of cultivate your response to the different men you may meet in the film. We haven't seen the end of the show, so we don't know what happens, but
right.
I love that you are able to cultivate those experiences from what I see for the future. You never know who, you'll interact with.
Absolutely.
Business.
I think that's another thing that I realized is like my personality varies largely dependent upon my relationship with the guys. For example, like just if I'm into a guy, they get a totally different Symone than if it's just my friend zone. So like Edwin will have a separate opinion of me and experience of me than Rashid may have had and things like that. And I was listening to an interview that Rashid had given, and when the interviewer was like, well, what was your experience with Symone when such and such happened? He was like, I don't have those problems with her. I guess I know how to handle her. And I was like, yes, that would be accurate.
Yes. But I mean, for one thing I can say about you and Rashid, you guys have this dynamic energy, so it's like a great ball of fun. So whereas Edwin is a lot more reserved, a lot more chill, a lot more talkative, a lot more serious. So I get it, and those are both sides of you. Like when you're doing your attorney work, Spears is on fire. I'm doing what I have to do, and then you also know how to let loose and have fun and bring joy.
Exactly. Absolutely. And it's and it was funny. I talk about well, I've mentioned it. So Anthony, one of the guys on the show, Anthony.
I interviewed him.
You did? Oh, wonderful. Did y'all have fun?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Well, we never really interacted at all at the mixer. And the next day, when we did interact, he was like, Symone, I have to admit, like, I really didn't take the time to meet you, but part of it was because I found out you were a lawyer, and my ex was a lawyer, and I didn't want. And I said, you know what? No hard feelings, because my ex was a ball player, so I didn't need to meet you either. I was just joking, but I think too, being an attorney with dating, whenever men have had prior negative experiences dating female lawyers, they write us all off. And I'm okay with that, because I don't want to be held responsible for someone else's offenses. You're not gonna put that on me. But I've realized that, like, when men get to know me independently, they're like, man, you're nothing like what I thought. I'm not.
So maybe the show will teach us not to judge books by their covers.
I think so too. I think that is definitely a theme that should definitely resonate through the show and through watching, the different cast members. And I was a fan. I've watched all the episodes, which was part of why I wanted to do this. And one of the reasons why I really encourage people to watch Ready to Love on OWN Friday nights is because there are 20 characters. You can see yourself or portions of yourself in various characters. And whether you feel like, you are dating perfectly and you have your perfect mate, then what you can see is, how do different people communicate? What are some things you may be able to do better? And then also you can see, man, what does it look like out in that dating world? Like, if you're like, well, maybe I want to leave the one I'm with, you might want to look at what's going on out here and be like, nah, they not that bad.
I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good.
That is so funny. As a Cornell Law School grad, how long have you been an attorney, and what or who inspired your career choice?
Absolutely. So I've been an attorney for about 13 years now. And I was inspired just as a little girl. I've always been inquisitive and loved problem solving. And it kind of started when I was little. My mom used to come in my room and it would be messy. And she said, whew, you don't have to go up and have a good job, like be a lawyer, so you don't have to clean your room. You'll be able to pay somebody. And I was like, cool, you could pay somebody to clean your room? I'm gonna be a lawyer. That's when I was like 6 or 7. And then I got older and I realized what they did. And I was like, you know what? I want to help people, but I don't want to be poor. This will be a great job for me. And so fast forward, my interest in the law grew and developed. But I think what always attracted me is I like problem solving and I really enjoy storytelling. And the type of law that I practice, it allows me to tell stories for those who can't articulate their positions as well for themselves. And because at the end of the day, with the law, the person who tells the better story wins. Mm-hmm.
Point blank, right?
Yeah, with the jury.
I mean, you've been an attorney for 13 years. You've helped a lot of people. What would you say are some of your proudest achievements as an attorney?
Oh, goodness. I think some of my proudest ones are the ones that have effectuated long-term change. So one example would be there's a wrongful death case that I worked on for a number of years with a particular company. And this company was making products that were monitored by the FDA, but they lied on all their FDA documentation. And ultimately, this product killed my client's child. Well, it was in school districts across America. And even after the FDA recalled it, they did not notify school districts. And children and staff continued to be burned by this equipment. And ultimately, I took all of the evidence I brought it to the FDA. This was a publicly traded multi-million-dollar company. And our evidence alone was enough to shut down the company forever.
Wow. Mm-hmm. You say
so that was seriously one of the proudest things. Yeah, that was one of my proudest. And of course, I do a lot of expungements and non-disclosures as well. And those are basically, it's a process in various states where you can seal your criminal record or have it erased, either or. That's very fulfilling to me as well, because it gives such immediate change and happiness to my clients' lives. Within about 60 to 90 days, they can reapply for a job they were rejected and they now qualify because they don't have that record that was previously visible that prevented them in the first place.
Oh, such good in the world. Thank you so much for all you do.
Thank you. I enjoyed it. It's fulfilling. It is fulfilling. A lot of hard work, but fulfilling as well.
Now, let's talk about COVID-19. It's been so challenging for so many people in a number of ways. We're talking about financially, health-wise, and much more. Let's talk about legal solutions for everyday consumers in COVID-related conditions. I know you're getting this. I know you're hearing your clients are asking for your help in this.
Absolutely. So let's start with just day-to-day at work. What are some of your options at work, right? So I've had multiple people call me and say, well, my job is not providing us with PPP or PPE, the protective equipment, or they're giving it to us, but they want us to use like the same mask for an entire week and so forth. You are not forced to be in that type of working situation. And here's what's challenging. First, I'll tell you what the law says, and then we'll talk about real solutions, because you gotta, earn a living, you gotta make money. So the law says you don't have to work in a dangerous work environment. And if they want you to come to work in a COVID environment, the job is supposed to provide you with the mask and gloves and those things. If they don't, you're not required to provide it, but if you choose to provide your own, you can ask for reimbursement for things like that. Also, if they're not willing to give you those things, you can request that your job assignment be changed to something where you do not have to interface with the public. So as one example, I actually had a nurse. There was a nurse. She was pregnant. She was worried about that. They gave her a job where she basically did administrative work from home and was able to do that throughout her pregnancy. There was a cashier at a grocery store. That grocery store also needed help with stocking. So that particular cashier was able to change and be a stocker on the evening shift, basically when the grocery store was closed. So that also reduced their exposure. But you have to, the main thing I recommend is you have to put all requests in writing as much as possible, whether that's via email or text messaging. But you definitely want to put it in writing and start there. And then if they're still not willing to give you those things, the masks and things like that, at that point, you should definitely contact your local work commission in your employment commission that protects workers in your area, and it varies by name. But you want to let them know, because they can document that, and then they also sometimes have resources for employees and for small businesses, because a lot of small businesses simply, are already struggling. So when you add on the cost for these protective things, it's truly difficult for so many of them. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And then making a way for businesses to continue to thrive, but also to retain your employees too, because
exactly. Absolutely.
You have to come to work if they're uncomfortable. I wholeheartedly agree with that. I read a statistic that says 79 million people have been displaced due to the COVID-19 pandemic. What rights do renters have in terms of breaking their leases?
Okay. Many states and all federal housing, so Section 8 type of housing and public housing, have moratoriums on evictions. And those moratoriums go through the end of this year. Now, what a moratorium says is that while the rent and those fees are still owed, they can't file to put you out until after the 31st. Here's the challenge. Then that means all those months you weren't paying, you have one big balloon payment that you've got to come up with. So one alternative for that is, one, you can always contact your landlord and see if they'd be willing to work with you. If you have a landlord that has a mortgage, that landlord may be able to reach out to whoever their mortgage person is and find out if they can get mortgage forbearance, meaning that the months where you're living there, they don't owe their mortgage. That will likely help the landlord be a lot more flexible. And secondly, if you know that you're not able to make that lump sum payment that's going to be due when that eviction is filed, you should go ahead and work with your landlord and see if you would agree to perhaps make one payment or a portion of that payment in exchange for turning in your keys, moving out promptly, and them not putting a derogatory eviction on your record. It's a case-by-case scenario, but for a lot of landlords, getting some money rather than none, would be better. Especially, if it's a situation where the amount they're asking for is, let's say, at this point, it's been 9 months, right, for the pandemic. If it's 9 months and you don't have that, if they could get 2, it would be better than nothing. Does that make sense?
Or even if you put the person out and then now the property is vacant, you're still not getting money, so.
Exactly. So
right.
yes, so
better.
The nothing. And you can also get a letter from that landlord if you communicate with them, where if you need like a referral to the next one, just a letter that says this tenant was in good standing at the time that that her lease terminated. And a simple letter like that would be very helpful, because you don't want to have to keep going back to that landlord in the future for a reference letter. It's always best to get one letter, have it dated as of the time after you left, and have that letter stand for you. Because otherwise, depending on the mood of that landlord, that reference letter could say anything. You don't want to run into that.
You mentioned forbearance if, say, the landlord has a mortgage on the property. What about a homeowner that has a single family home? Is that something that's available?
Oh, yes. Homeowners have a lot more protections and options. If you are a homeowner and you have a federally backed mortgage, so like a conventional or FHA, they are giving at least 6 months forbearance. And then at that 6-month point, if you feel that you need more, a lot of mortgage companies are then doing a month-to-month forbearance. And what they'll do there, you definitely want to confirm with your mortgage company, because your interest will still accrue, but they usually tack those months onto the end of your mortgage. I, in fact, asked for that. And they said, okay, well, you have a 30-year, so it's going to be 36. I said, well, that's fine. By 30, well, not 36, but 30 years, 6 months. And I said, well, that's fine, because I plan to pay it off by then anyway. So, and it's very good to go ahead and ask for anything you think you might need in the new year, because they're offering a lot of these programs and deferments right now through the end of the year, but they are very stringent and strict, saying that as of the new year, they're not going to be as lenient and they're not going to offer certain things. And I believe that it's likely in part because now that we've got the vaccines coming out, a lot of these companies feel that, people should be able to pull them up by the bootstraps, so to speak. And we all know that realistically, that's not so feasible for everyone.
I know that businesses are out to make money. I get it. You didn't launch a business,
right?
To hang out. But for a mortgage company, is that like public? I know it's public knowledge, but like, do they notify their customers like, hey, if you're having, for anybody out there that's having, or is it like tip top secret? Like it's like a secret.
It's one of those things. So what's funny is nowadays, you usually most people get their bills on electronically, like via email and things like that. And what I've noticed is I have not been receiving anything that has proactively offered help. A lot of it is kind of secret. You have to call in to find out about it. Or if you go to their website, they'll sometimes have a banner at the top of the website. And actually, it's often easier if they do have such a banner to use the electronic means to do it rather than calling in, because calling in these days, you can be on hold forever. And actually, one of the very little known relief options during COVID is actually for Obamacare. So many people have been complaining that Obamacare is so expensive and it's, out of reach for the average American. Well, because the current administration is not a supporter of the Affordable Care Act, they stopped advertising the fact that subsidies exist. So a lot of people don't realize all you have to do is pick up the phone, call and say, hey, I'm interested in finding out if I qualify for an Obamacare subsidy. And that you can do this even if you're already enrolled in a plan and you've been in that plan for months. Over the phone, they'll just take your financial information. And here's the key. If you've been affected by COVID, don't give them the dollar amount that you made last year. You're going to tell them the amount you have today. So if today you're collecting unemployment, you tell them the amount in unemployment that you're making monthly. If your hours have been reduced, you give them that dollar that month. I had a client that I helped to do this. They went from paying $511 per month for their Obamacare down to $140 per month with a $50 annual deductible.
Wow.
So it really, really helps. But it's a little known secret. If you don't call, you won't know, and it's not really advertised anywhere.
They don't want you to know.
Right.
It seems like a common thing. There are resources out here, and that's why I'm so glad that we're having this conversation and you're giving so much information, because I hope that this helps somebody watching
Absolutely.
To go in and procure those resources. My goodness. What about, here we go. For anyone out there who has canceled trips due to COVID, how do they leverage getting a refund for flights not taken.
Yes, absolutely. So with the airlines, their default policy is simply allowing you to change your flight. So the first thing is it depends on when you booked. So earlier in the year, let's say through March, April, May, those flights at the time that you booked them were non-refundable, right? But for example, myself, I was supposed to go to a bachelorette party to St. Martin. St. Martin closed its doors. So that flight was canceled. So you can demand a refund back to however you paid for it. So a refund back to your credit card. The way to do that though is you have to contact each airline and you have to say specifically, I do not want.
There we go.
Sorry about that. Okay, sorry. You have to say to that company specifically, I do not want a credit. I want a cash refund. And then they will tell you the process. So you are entitled to a cash refund if you booked it earlier in the year. Now, if you booked it later in the year, like more so like June and beyond, then those tickets, they specifically stated they will simply just let you rebook into next year for free without a change. So if that's the case, you can rebook in that manner.
I'm starting the new year off focused on self-care, peace of mind, and organization. When I'm out and about, there's no need for me to rummage for my keys now that I have this Bangle and Babe bracelet key ring. They come in an array of styles and bright, beautiful colors for every outfit of the day. Ready to love. She's a financial and wellness coach dedicated to improving the lives of others through her credit and financial management firm, Real Freedom with Love. Mia, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you. I am doing amazing. How are you doing today?
I am fantastic,
Wonderful.
Making it work every day.
Definitely.
So I read that you're a holistic mindset strategist, educator, and entrepreneur. What inspired your affinity for helping others?
I realize, and thank you for that. Yes, that's definitely what encompasses me. But I realize that as people of color or people of the global majority, Black and brown individuals in the world at large, we need to be better about self-care. And I realized taking it home, I needed to be better about self-care. And so I give a lot of advice, but I wasn't always taking my own advice. So I needed to move into a position where I was able to not only incorporate what I do for myself, but also put it in a position and make it digestible for others.
Awesome. Before the world was impacted by COVID-19, a lot of people were struggling financially. Like, this isn't like a new idea. But as a mindset strategist, how do you encourage people to develop positive relationships with money?
First I figure out why their relationship with money is negative. I figure out where those habits and where these ideals and myths and things like that came from. A lot of us had trauma associated with money as children. Our parents would say, if you say, do you want to go to McDonald's? They say, well, do you have any McDonald's money? And that creates that negative association, or talking about bills in a way that made you feel like you were in a sense of lack or that you didn't have that. So I try to figure out where those triggers or bad habits came from, or just unhealthy habits. Sometimes it's that you didn't always have the money to get what you wanted. So when you get in a position where your money is good, then you're starting to spend it irresponsibly because you're like, I deserve that bag. I deserve those shoes. I deserve those red bottoms, whatever it is. So trying to figure out how to get back to that. And I incorporate a lot of holistic practices like Reiki and energetic healing to try to figure out how to reverse those things, balance your chakras, and make sure that you're in a good place.
I would be curious to know, for you personally, how was your relationship with money growing up?
My relationship with money, my parents didn't talk about not having money, but I knew in a household of 8 children, being the youngest of 8, that there were some things that we needed to overcome. They always made the best of what we had, and they didn't give us that negative association with it, but I still feel like they didn't talk enough about the investments that they were making. And that part of the sacrifice was because no matter how much we didn't have it, they still made it a point to pour into their 401k and 403, so that now they're able to be retired and enjoy that. I knew that something was happening, but I wish we were at the table when they were making those benefit elections and deciding where that money went. So it was a relationship where I knew that money wasn't something that created happiness because we had a really fun house. As long as you had a radio, you know, and some batteries, you know, then we were good to go. But I wish that we had been more involved in the process.
I completely understand. And then do you carry that? I don't know if you have children or a family now, but do you, you know, make sure that you instill those types of values that maybe you were excluded from as a child?
Absolutely. Since my daughter was young, I took her into the bank to make deposits. She knew how to fill out a deposit slip. She knew what was going on with the money that was going into the bank. I would have her sit down at the table. You know, she could have her coloring book, but while I'm paying bills, I'm like, you see this? This is why I'm telling you to turn the lights on. There's way too many numbers before the decimal point on this. So I definitely involved her in the process. And she was at a young age would say, oh, we're going to Target. This is the red card. And I'm like, okay, listen. This is the card for Target, but we are not using the card today because we are using cash, and here's the reason why. So she probably got a little bit more than she wanted, but I really wanted her to respect money and not be one of those kids that thought, and this is going to date me, that as long as you have checks, you have money. You know, and I've explained that they didn't teach us that in school. They said, oh, here's how you write a check, but they didn't tell us that if you write the checks without the money in the bank, you could go to jail.
Mm-hmm. They don't spend enough. Still don't spend enough time telling you that when they give you those checks at the bank. They still don't. There still is a lack of education. So I do like to hear that as a parent, you were like, I'm going to educate my child, and you know, I hope that encourages parents out there to do the same for their children, no matter how young they are.
Absolutely.
So financial woes have been known to cause stress and anxiety for the best of us. How can those feelings affect our overall health and wellness, in your opinion?
You know, in a huge way. Not only is finance one of the major causes of divorce, it's also one of the major causes of physical illness. Because when you're feeling like, you know, people say that money isn't everything and money doesn't grow on trees, but I can tell you that not having it makes it a little bit harder to breathe, you know, when you're trying to take care of things. And so a lot of times we internalize areas of lack and lack of money and things like that, and it begins to cause physical stress. If you have a pile of bills sitting there and you know you don't have the money to pay them, the first thing that happens is you get a headache, right? Because you're like, I don't know what I'm going to do with these bills. You check your credit score and it's not where you want it to be. You start to feel anxiety in your chest. And that's actually led to people having heart attacks and other things like that. So it definitely impacts your physical health. It restricts you from being able to go and exercise because you're so stressed out about it. You feel a sense of lethargicness, and then you don't want to get up and move your body the way that you should. And a lot of people feel like buying cheaper food has to be fast food when you can get inexpensive, healthy options. But a lot of times people get swayed by the $59, $79, $99 menu at your favorite fast food restaurant. And then you're actually clogging your arteries and things like that.
So coupled with the poor diets on top of the anxiety and the stress, it's not good at all.
Absolutely.
And I would like to implore people to take your advice because, I know we're in the wake of COVID, and, you know, it's a really challenging time financially, health-wise, et cetera, for people. But I like that you're encouraging people to take initiatives to be better, to live better, to live healthier lives, and be a lot more financially sound.
Definitely. And it doesn't have to be expensive. You know, these are things that you can do at home. There are so many free videos to get up and get you moving and things like that. So just taking the stairs, park your car a little bit further away. I know a lot of areas are closed.